So it's August 2021 and 35mm film like this, 36 exposures can cost as much as $16 or £13 for a roll. This is the most expensive it's ever been to shoot film, and I think it's unfair that many people are now getting to the point that they can't shoot film because they can't afford to spend $15, $16 on 36 exposures. I had a model friend just a few days ago text saying she wished she could afford to shoot film after seeing some of my film photos posted on Instagram. With that said, it's not all doom and gloom. In this video I'll show you a camera that will allow you to shoot film 50% cheaper than any other of your full frame 35mm film cameras that you may currently be using or wish to use if you're looking to get into film photography. So 100% promise this will make your film photography 50% cheaper. So grab a chair and a notebook and I'll give you all the information you need. Hello, welcome, Matt Osborne here from MrLeica.com. I'm a UK portrait photographer and I make YouTube videos on film camera reviews, Leica reviews, and normally using my female model portraits as example photos for the cameras and lenses that I test. So today I'm introducing you to the 1963 Olympus Pen-F half-frame SLR camera. This was the first half-frame SLR camera ever made, and it allows you to shoot 72 images or more from a 36 roll of film. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'll tell you all you need to know about this camera, the lenses available, how it compares to SLR cameras and rangefinder cameras, and also introduce you to storytelling with your camera. I'll explain more on that as we go through the video. Let's get started. Now, we often talk about Leica on this channel, so how does this compare size-wise to small Leica cameras? So for all of you digital Leica CL shooters, on the top we have a Leica CL, on the bottom we have obviously the Pen F. So you can really see that it's quite a nice compact size. This is half frame and this is a crop sensor, so I guess it's similar in some respects. So in terms of a full frame rangefinder camera, the Barnett cameras are very small. As you can see here on the top we've got the Leica 2F with the Canon 50-1.8, and then there it is next to the Pen F. So this is a 38mm 1.8 lens, which is the equivalent of 55mm in full frame terms. So these two setups will give you roughly the same final image in terms of the kind of 50mm-ish equivalent. So you can see the Pen F is a similar size to a small rangefinder camera. That gives you some idea of how amazingly small it is. Now I guess just for completeness, if we're talking about small rangefinder cameras, we can't rule out the Olympus 35RC. This is a small rangefinder camera. SLR camera, rangefinder camera. And I guess to make it a fair test, yesterday I was shooting with a Nikon SLR camera. So let's see how the Pen F compares to a Nikon. So, as I'm normally a 50mm shooter, it has a 50mm lens on from yesterday. 50mm f2 lens, 38-1.8, so again roughly the same focal length. So let's have a look. I'll have to do it this way this time because the Nikon's too big. So this is a reasonably small Nikon, the Nikon FE2, and I was shooting it with the Nikon 50mm f2 AI lens. Thank you to all you Nikon shooters that told me to buy this lens. This lens is amazing. Slightly off topic, but I'll maybe have to do a video on this. But basically you can see the Pen F is a fraction of the size of a standard SLR camera. So amazing size, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I almost forgot, before we finish on size, I want to show you one more camera because it'll make sense in a second. So now we have, how shall I do it, like this. So now we have Leica M3 on the top with a 50mm f2 lens, Pen F obviously on the bottom. Why am I showing you these two cameras? I'm showing you these two cameras because they are similar in some respect. This is an early Leica M3, meaning it has a double stroke. So on a double stroke camera you go once, twice, fire, once, twice, fire, Leica. And then the Pen F is exactly the same. Once, twice, fire, once, twice. But did you hear there's a slight difference? If I do it close to the microphone for you. So this is a Leica M3. And this is the sound of the Pen F. You gotta listen quietly or you won't hear it. 1, 2, 3. So it may be a nice small pocket stealth camera until you fire the shutter, and then you get all the birds are gonna fly away because it's not the quietest camera. It is definitely louder than a Leica camera for those of you who own Leica cameras and want to kind of relate to it. I can't fire the Nikon because there's some film still in the camera, but it's a lab camera, put it that way. So let me tell you about the 3 different versions of this camera, so that if you are looking to buy this camera, you know which camera to buy. There are 3 main versions of the Olympus Pen F, but before the Pen F came the Pen D series, the Pen E, and then afterwards there was the Pen S and the Pen W. This video we're only looking at Pen F, and Pen F there was 3 versions. There was the standard Pen F, which is the one I have, and this was the first of the series of the Pen F cameras in production from 1963 to 1966. This camera has no battery, so it's full manual like the Leica M3, hence I've got the Leica M3 out for you. And so because it's got no battery, it's also got no light meter. The original Pen F is easy to identify because you have the Gothic F on the front of the camera here, and then on the camera top plate you have the Pen F. Following the Pen F, in 1966 they released the Pen FT. The Pen FT then brought a TTL light meter. It has a self timer, but because of how the light meter works, it now has a dimmer viewfinder. So then in 1967 they released the Pen FV. The Pen FV was a cheaper version of the FT because they then removed the light meter, so it's more similar to the original Pen F, except it has a self timer. The Pen FT has the Pen F written on the front in standard font, and then the FT logo on the top, and the Pen FV also had the standard Pen F written on the front but FV on the front. You can buy these cameras in silver or black, and I think they look particularly nice in black if you can find one. I picked up my Pen F on eBay in 2016, so I've had it for 5 years so far. When the Pen F was released, the main difference between this half frame camera and other half frame cameras is this is an interchangeable lens SLR camera where you can focus it accurately like any other SLR camera. All previous half frame cameras were zone focused cameras, meaning you kind of have to estimate your distance from your subject. So completely different to an SLR camera where I can focus really accurately and really close, say even for detail shots. There's lots of example photos coming and I can show you that. So as mentioned, this is an interchangeable lens SLR camera, and to remove the lens you press the button on the top of the lens and twist. And then inside you can see this is not your average SLR camera. This has a vertical mirror, which means when you look to the viewfinder, you have a portrait orientation viewfinder rather than a standard landscape orientation viewfinder. This is perfect for me because I shoot portraits, so like looking through the Fuji GS645 that has the vertical format viewfinder. The differences don't stop there. This doesn't have this standard 2-curtain shutter design. Instead it has a rotating metal disc focal plane shutter. If I fire the shutter you won't really be able to see it, but you'll be able to see the mirror flipping. So like any SLR camera, the mirror moves and the disc is rotating in the background. The huge advantage of this shutter design means you can sync flash right up to your maximum flash sync speed. The Pen F gives you shutter speeds from bulb all the way through to 500ths of a second. So this means you can sync flash at 500ths of a second. I've definitely made the most of this aspect of this camera, and it was one reason why I did buy this camera in the first place, and I'll show you some examples shortly. One thing you will notice, there's no accessory shoe on the top of these cameras, but you can get a clip-on accessory shoe, meaning you can then attach your flash to your cold shoe. Obviously cold shoes are not active, so you need to fire your flash from the PC sync port on the end of the camera body. In terms of weight, even with the lens attached, this camera weighs 600 grams, which is around 21 ounces. That means with the lens attached, it's slightly heavier than the body only of say a Leica M camera. They're around 580 grams, so more or less the same, but that's body only, and this is camera body and lens, so this is significantly cheaper. So in terms of lenses, as mentioned, this is a 38mm f1.8, which is the standard lens which comes on many of these cameras, and this is equivalent to 55mm in full frame terms. And for the Olympus Pen F bayonet mount, you could buy lenses from 20mm all the way through to 800mm. So you can imagine 800mm is the 35mm full frame equivalent. If you then add the half frame crop factor, that is a seriously long lens. So if you enjoy wildlife photography and you want to photo penguins on the Arctic, perhaps get yourself a Pen F and an 800mm lens. That might give you some extra reach compared to the camera and lens that you're currently using. Also to note, because this is an SLR camera, basically you look through the lens and what you see is what you get. You can adapt other lenses to this camera system. So all you need to do is buy the Olympus Pen-F adapter to say Canon or to Nikon, and then you can attach all your Canon SLR lenses or your Nikon SLR lenses. I'm mainly a Nikon SLR shooter for my SLR photography, so I'd get Pen F to Nikon adapter, and then I could use all my Nikon lenses on the little Pen F. Personally, I've been very happy with the lens that came on the camera, and I like the small form factor, so I've never looked to need to adapt, but that is one way to do it if you want to play around and make it more of a system camera. Also to note before we move on, I mentioned that the Pen F doesn't have a light meter. You can get a clip-on light meter which attaches to the shutter speed dial, and by mounting the light meter to your shutter speed dial, it means you don't then need to mount a light meter to your accessory shoe, meaning you don't need the accessory shoe attachment. If you can find one on eBay, they're probably not that easy to find unless you buy it with the camera. Personally, I use a handheld Sekonic meter and do my metering that way. In terms of how this camera works, there's not that many buttons and dials on this camera to basically tell you. You have your shutter release here, which is a bit different to a normal camera, where it's a long flat button rather than a round button. You can attach your cable release here, just screw it in there for your, say, long exposures. There's your frame counter. There's your film rewind crank. I'll just pop it up to show you. Like so, like any other film rewind crank. As already mentioned, on the top of the lens you have one button to release the lens. The second button gives you your depth of field preview. So what that means is if you look through the viewfinder of an SLR camera, normally what you see is the depth at its widest aperture. If you then step down from 1.8 to say f4, 5.6, by pressing the depth of field preview button, you can now see your depth at f4. So that's useful to have. On the base of the camera, again, very few features. You have your standard button to rewind your film, so you'd press this in and then use your rewind crank that we've already mentioned. And then in terms of opening the film back, you just lift your rewind crank and lift up, and then that will open the back. And inside you can really see how small a half frame 35mm film camera frame looks like. And also you can see the shutter. Maybe I can fire the shutters to show you. So here's the shutter on an 1/8 of a second. And so that's the metal rotating disc. To load the film, it's very straightforward. Put your film leader in this slot, drag your film across, put your cassette in here, drop down your rewind crank until it clicks, close the back, and then you're ready to shoot. So if we now look at some images, first of all we'll look at portraits. So these portraits are shot outside with 5/100th of a second and a off-camera flash fired via the PC sync cable into the side of the camera, and to my mind you can see it gives quite a nice image considering it's only half the size of a standard 35mm negative. Now one question you may have is, why am I showing you two photos at a time? Now if you can visualize a film strip, the camera takes vertical photos, so when you come to scan your film, the scanner recognizes two Pen F photos is the same frame size as one standard 35mm photo, so I then scan photos in pairs. This then brings me on to the storytelling aspect of this camera, because suddenly instead of having one standalone image, which I'm 100% guilty of, I tend to shoot photos as singles and post photos as singles on my Instagram account, on Flickr, on Facebook. I nearly always post singles. The huge benefit of posting in pairs or multiples is you can start to tell a story and give your photos more of a narrative. So with that in mind, that then made me shoot my Pen F slightly differently. So instead of shooting single frames and then thinking of them as individual photos, I tried to think in pairs. So as you can hopefully see in some of these images, you'll see either two slightly different images where I'll either go maybe slightly closer on one photo, slightly further back on the next photo, or I'll have one photo with the girl posing in one way and then I might ask her to change her hand slightly. You could do the whole Instagram thing where you have one photo focus on your subject and the background blurry, and then the second photo of the background in focus and your subject blurry. You see that quite a lot in 2021 on Instagram. Having two images, that's even stronger than just one blurry subject photo, because you can tell more of a story by showing both the subject and their location. I think it's a really great way to use it. And for those of you that don't know, posting two images together is called a diptych. Some of the way diptych images are used, as mentioned, you can have two similar images, you can have two contrasting images, you can have images telling a story, you can tell a sequence of events. For a sequence of events, it might be more useful to have more than two frames, and this is where triptych comes in. So diptych means two, and as you can probably guess, triptych means three. So triptychs is where I shot three images in a row to try to do like a panoramic. So you could shoot a landscape scene or a street scene, and instead of having to pay £3,000, $4,000 on a panoramic 35mm Hasselblad X-Pan, see that video if you want more information. Instead you can shoot a sequence of vertical half frames and then scan it as one strip, and post as one strip. I don't think I've ever done more than 3 frames in a row, but I should probably get a bit more creative and go and do some landscapes and shoot maybe 4 to 6 frames in a row and see how that looks. I think you could use the Pen F camera to make some really amazing and unique work. And then what about single images? So far I've only showed you pairs or threes of images. So here are a few single photos. Why do I not have many single frame photos from this camera? You need to bear in mind that the resolution of this camera is half that of a standard 35mm camera. So you don't want to enlarge the negative too big because it's going to get very grainy and kind of lose a lot of detail. So this brings me on to what film should you use in your Pen F camera. Personally, I found my best results have been from very fine graining films. So the likes of Kodak T-Max 400. It's a 400 speed film, but it's a very fine grain film, so I find it works really well, especially say in the winter months when I need more light, and so I wanted to stop down to f5.6. The 38mm lens is good enough to use wide open, but if you stop the lens down a bit, it does get much sharper. So T-Max 400 when there's not much light, and then for other black and white images I might use Kodak T-Max 100, Olympus Pen-F 50, Olympus Delta 100, just a few examples that I've shot with. And then for colour, I really enjoyed slide film. Now I know slide film is getting more and more ridiculously expensive, but if you've got a special trip and you want to take one camera and shoot multiple images and in colour, I'd recommend shooting something like Fuji Provia 100 or any other fine grained slide films. The advantage is because you're getting more than 72 frames per roll, it certainly makes expensive films more affordable and it makes it all a bit more durable. In terms of exactly how many frames you get on a roll of 36 exposure film, they all say 72, but if you load it correctly you can get closer to 76 because you can easily get 38 frames per roll on a 36 roll of film from a standard camera. I normally get 38 frames on nearly all my cameras, and that's full frame. So then if you double it, you're going to get 76 frames from a half frame camera. If you then do the maths, it certainly becomes much more affordable, and it may make the difference between you being able to shoot film and not shoot film. Now before we get into price, there is one really big problem with this camera. It takes forever to finish one roll of film. For any of you that struggle to finish one roll of 36 exposure film, multiply that obviously by 2, and even for someone that shoots quite a lot of film, it literally takes forever. You can just shoot it and shoot it and shoot it, and then you look at it, it's like, I've only shot 16 frames. And so film will last a while, so that probably is the biggest downside of this camera in terms of if you're impatient to see your images, try to use this camera when you're going to shoot it a lot. As I say on vacation, I think vacation is absolutely perfect for this camera because number one, it's small. Number 2, it's affordable. I'll tell you that in a second. And number 3, getting a lot of photos from one roll of film, meaning small camera in your bag and less film in your bag and less money's worth of equipment in your bag, all equals amazing for travel photography. So massive tick in the box for travel photography, and probably second biggest tick in the box for being creative and storytelling with your images. If you're stuck in a rut with your standard camera, this will 100% make you shoot differently because just the aspect of having to think of 1, 2 or 3, 4 frames in a sequence totally transforms how you shoot. It did for me personally, and I do need to use this camera again. I am guilty that I've not used this camera for a few years, and making this video has inspired me to dust it off and take some more photos with it as soon as I can go somewhere exciting. And then price. So obviously this camera is giving you a lot for the money, so you're expecting a high price tag. Yes. Not at all. I checked on eBay as at August 2021, and you can buy an Olympus Pen-F with the 38mm 1.8 standard lens for around $200 or £160 if you're in the UK. That's crazy. So for any of you used to Leica prices, £1,500 for this bit, maybe £400 or £500 for this bit, it is considerably cheaper. And if you're a Nikon shooter, yes, you can get cheaper Nikon cameras like the Nikon F80, the Nikon FG20, which I've already covered. But in terms of a full mechanical Nikon camera, maybe the same price as a Nikon SLR, maybe slightly cheaper, but with the huge advantage that you're going to get twice as many photos from your camera. So suddenly it makes it twice as affordable for actually using the camera once you've got the camera. I think the problem you're going to have in 2022, 2023, 2024, if you're like myself, you'll have some nice cameras, but then the film prices are just going up and up and up and up and up, and so it gets to the point that you don't want to spend the money on the film to feed the camera to take your pictures. So I think half frame cameras are only going to get more and more popular in the coming years, as people still want to continue to shoot film but don't want to spend the money for 36 pictures when they could have 76 pictures. So that's my review of the Olympus Pen F half frame SLR camera. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and feel free to subscribe to watch future videos. And just quickly before you go, for any of you that are struggling to find videos on my channel, I've got around 190 videos. So what I've done is I've made an Excel spreadsheet where you can filter by camera manufacturer, lens focal length, lens mount, whether it's film or Leica. I've tried to make it so every video is very searchable. I'm posting an average of 2 videos a week to YouTube, so I'll update the spreadsheet every couple of weeks. If you want the spreadsheet, just click the link below and subscribe to the mrleica.com blog, and I'll send you a free copy of the spreadsheet, and it'll make searching for videos a million times easier. And for those of you that have already subscribed to my YouTube channel, see you all in the next video. Bye.